Hi, welcome to my video explaining the production techniques I used for the 2 songs on my EP that I've made. I wrote both of these songs, lyrics and chords and melody. I wrote everything, and I got 2 different vocalists to sing on them. I think the best way to go about this is to go structurally from verse 1 to the chorus to verse 2 and then to the end of the song, basically. So yeah, I'll basically just talk through the instrumentation, why I chose what I chose, basically my choices along the way. So to start off at verse 1, I've kept it quite light at the beginning. As you can see, this is quite a textural song, there's quite a lot of layers. At the beginning of the song, however, there's only a few layers compared to the rest of the song. And there is no drums at the start because I wanted to give like an ominous kind of feel to it, a bit of ambiguity, and I wanted to lead up to the chorus as well. So so to start off with, all I have is so I just have some synth pads here, which are kind of like the main textural presence in the first verse, and they're just very much just for ambience, just airy. And they just sit nicely under the vocals, as you can see. Told you before, didn't want more of the same. And just above that is a piano with some block chords, and they're quite high in register. And the bass I've chosen is I've added a sub bass to it. So I quite liked the contrast of the sub bass, the very low end bass, compared to her very clean sounding high vocals that we have here. I think it's a nice contrast, and you're seeing it quite a lot in a lot of modern pop songs these days, of like high soft female vocals with like a very low end presence as well, because it's a nice contrast. So for the pre-chorus leading up to the first chorus, there are actually no vocals involved apart from a delayed effect from the last word of the first verse. So as you can see here, I'll just play a bit. I've just delayed the last word of the first verse, so it goes over the top of the pre-chorus. And as that's happening, there's a plucked synth string thing happening here, and it almost sounds like an electric guitar. However, it's got a weird delay effect to it and a weird kind of stereo vibe happening, which I really quite liked. So that's going over the top, and then when that's going over the top, all that's really the synths, the pads are still happening, and there are some big rises that kind of lead up to the big reveal of the chorus. So there's a fog machine, which is pretty much just like a filter sweep. It was like, and some kind of arpeggiated percussion. And then the last thing that really happens here, I've added a reverse piano, the very last section of the pre-chorus, to kind of just build up to that chorus. So that's happening as well. Now onto the chorus. So for this chorus, there's obviously quite a lot happening here. The main focus I wanted was to have, like I spoke about in the first verse, like this big bass, in contrast to her kind of innocent sounding high vocals, which is what I think I pulled off. I have 3 main bass synths here, and they're all quite sawtoothy, quite fuzzy in a way. Kind of sounds very electric guitar-y, like distortion, electric guitar amps. It kind of has that vibe. And I basically just automated it to drop out on every half beat, so it goes and then drop, and so there's nothing but the ends of reverb tails when she says water, and it kind of adds this very dramatic effect, because it's like when she says it, everything drops out, which is what I wanted to go for, and I think I quite effectively pulled that off. As you can see here, everything drops out when she says water. And all that's left is a slight reverb tail from the cymbal crash. I still have the sub bass going through all of it, which is also mirroring the more melodic sawtooth synth, and it has the same automation effects going as well. But that's kind of what I went for there. And then I have this big kind of snare happening as well. It's kind of quite a unique sounding snare. The contrast of the silence happens in the first half of the chorus, and then the second half of the chorus, it's a lot more full. I've added a lot more chordal based strings and piano, and it just sounds a lot more full. Also, in the second half of this chorus, I've added some backing vocals. They're actually my backing vocals. I've just edited them quite a lot. I have an EQ, a compressor, some reverb, quite a lot of reverb, like a de-esser, and also a lot of auto-tune to kind of get this robotic harmonization vibe. In the second verse, we have a steady drum beat now, which we didn't have in the first verse. And we also have some triplet plucked synth as well. It has like a 12/8 time signature feel to it, which I quite like. It's a bit unconventional in pop songs. Most of them have like this 4/4 vibe. I wanted to keep the drums, especially the kick, quite dry. So this kick, yeah, it's a very dry kind of bassy kick, just because the rest of the song is very wet in terms of reverb, and I felt like having dry drums would really have a nice change to the rest of the track. If everything was wet, it would sound like a muddy mess. That's all I'm going to really talk about for the instrumentation. I want to talk a bit about the vocals now. So yeah, the vocals were quite tricky in terms of trying to get them to sound good. So I had a 2 to 3 hour session with my vocalist back in April. We had quite a lot of recordings for each section of the song. We did loads of takes for verse 1, loads of takes for verse 2, and all the choruses. So there's quite a lot to dig through, and basically what I did, as you can see here, the takes are split up because each of these sections of the verse are from different takes that we've done. I basically sat through a lot of takes and chose the best words and the best phrases from each one and patched them all together. I saw Clint Murphy doing this in one of the production technique sessions, and he said that that's the best way to get the best sounding vocals, is just to get the best takes from each one and be very, very picky. I actually put it all through Melodyne. I just kind of tidied it up a little bit. Some of the syllables, like this one here, so that "of" there was very prominent, so I turned that down within Melodyne. I just kind of is a bit more on pitch in some parts. I didn't edit all of it, but some parts were a little bit pitchy, and it was just very useful to me to get the best sounding vocal. I also added in the chorus here artificial harmony. Water, you can't walk on water. So Melodyne has a great tool where you can create artificial harmonies, which is what I did, and I think it sounds actually quite decent. And especially with the music, you can't tell at all if it's fake or not. So yeah, that really helped me out with trying to thicken the vocals. Other than that, the vocals just have very standard effects. For the EQ, as you can see here, taking up the low end, no one really needed that in the vocals. She has a very high voice and no one wants the rumbling. So taking out that, boosted the highs a bit, pretty much it. She had a very soft vocal, so I wanted to enhance that with the EQ. I added a CLA28 compressor, and yeah, it's quite a hard compressor because it's quite a full-on song and it has a lot of dynamic range, so I wanted her vocals to stay the same level throughout. De-esser was kind of needed. Some of her S's were very kind of piercing to the ears, especially in headphones, so I just added a slight de-esser there. That's pretty much it for the vocals. So I just want to briefly talk about my second song, which is called Look Before You Fall. I've used the same pads as the first track. In terms of instrumentation, it's a lot more simpler. I wanted to go for the dramatic feel again, but this time it was not so aggressive. It has sad tones to it, ballad pop, it has a strong emphasis on strings in this one. There are some definite similarities happening. And that's it for this track, really. Thanks for listening.